Think about an emergency situation that demands you to know how to drive a car that isn't automatic. Imagine having to get somewhere and your only mode of transportation has a standard transmission. This video will give you detailed instructions on how to start off, drive, and stop a car with a 5 or 6 speed transmission, which they usually operate the same way. Most people over 30 had to learn to drive on a stick shift. There are some, however, who never acquired that ability. Many young people have been hampered with automatics because most vehicles produced after the year 2000 are automatic. They have automatic transmissions. When starting up a car with a standard transmission, there are a couple of things the driver needs to be aware of. The first and probably most important of which is that there are 3 foot pedals instead of 2. On the far right is the gas pedal, followed by the brake, and then to the far left is the clutch. There is also a shifter in between the 2 front seats protruding from the floor, which is similar to an automatic, except instead of there being drive and neutral and reverse, you have the actual gears, and they're usually listed on the top of the shifter. To start off, the driver must press the clutch to the floor and hold it while cranking the vehicle. After the car is cranked, the e-brake needs to be released if it's been applied, and the foot brake needs to also be pressed to keep the car from rolling. To get moving, the driver needs to move the shifter into first gear, or whichever direction they're going. First gear is the furthest to the left and forward. Note that sometimes reverse is, instead of to the far right and down, how it would be in most standard transmissions, it's to the far left and up. Further left than first gear. When the gear has been selected, the driver will then slowly release the clutch and press the gas pedal simultaneously. The clutch will continue to be released slowly until the driver feels the transmission engage. He will then begin to release the clutch faster and apply more gas until the car is in full motion. Next, after the car is moving, the driver will need to pay attention to the tachometer. Tachometer is to the left of the speedometer and usually displays numbers 1 through 7 or 9 or whatever the rating is, and says multiply by 1,000. This indicates how many revolutions per minute, or RPMs, the shaft is completing. When the car is at 2,500 or so RPM, the driver will simultaneously release the gas and press the clutch, shift the stick to the next gear, and return to the gas while releasing the clutch. All in one sort of smooth motion. It's a little bit easier to do than it is to talk about. To stop, it's better to downshift, which is basically the opposite of upshifting. Stopping, as usual, requires pressing the brake. Stopping with a 5-speed is a little bit more complicated. The brake and clutch are both pressed. The shifter is moved to the next lowest gear, so if you were in 4th, you'd move it up to 3rd, or if you were in 5th, you'd go down to 4th. After the clutch is pressed and the gear is selected, the clutch is slowly released until the RPMs are closer to 2,500, which is operating range. The process is repeated until the car is stopped. So that gives you a basic overview on how to start, move, and stop a car with a 5-speed transmission.